You can be surrounded and still feel alone. God sees you. There are people watching this right now who are not alone, but feel completely unseen. You show up, you smile, you do what's expected of you. Yet deep down, there's a quiet ache you don't know how to explain. It's the loneliness that lives inside a full life. If that's you, don't scroll away. Because this message isn't about being abandoned by people. It's about something far more personal. It's about the truth that even when no one around you truly sees your heart, God does. And if you stay with me, you may discover that your loneliness is not proof of absence, but evident that God is closer than you've ever realized. There are moments when life is full of sound, yet your soul feels unbearably quiet. Conversations are happening around you. Phones are lighting up. People are calling your name. Yet somewhere deep inside there is a hollow space that no voice seems to reach. You can be surrounded by faces, included in plans, even smiled at often, and still carry a loneliness that follows you home at night. Not the kind that comes from being alone in a room, but the kind that settles in the heart and whispers no one really sees you. This kind of loneliness is hard to explain, because from the outside everything looks fine. You show up, you respond, you function. You laugh at the right moments and say the right words. And because you're there, people assume you're okay. But what they don't see is the weight you carry, the thoughts you silence, the prayers you don't finish, exhaustion that comes from always being present for others while feeling invisible yourself. It's a quiet ache, and it doesn't announce itself. It just stays. The Bible never pretends this pain doesn't exist. Scripture is honest enough to name the loneliness that survives in the middle of community, the sorrow that lingers even when life seems full. God is not confused by it, and He is not disappointed in you for feeling it. He knows there are seasons when being surrounded only makes the emptiness feel sharper, because it reminds you of what you're missing, not people but understanding, not attention but connection. Here is the truth that must be spoken gently. But over time, being unseen by people does not mean you are unseen by God. While others may only notice the version of you that functions, God sees the version that is weary. While people hear your words, God hears the pauses. While the world responds to what you show, God responds to who you are when no one is watching. You may feel overlooked, emotionally forgotten, or quietly fading into the background of your own life. But God's gaze has never left you. Not in the crowded room, not in the lonely night, not in the moments when you wondered if your presence even mattered. He sees you fully, patiently, and personally. And in that truth, there is a hope strong enough to hold you right where you are. Number one, when the crowd can't touch the heart. There is a strange kind of pain that comes from being present everywhere, yet feeling known nowhere. You can sit in a room full of people, hear your name spoken, feel the warmth of shared laughter, and still sense a distance no one else seems to notice. The crowd can touch your shoulder, hear your voice, even rely on you, but it never quite reaches your heart. And because you are surrounded, it feels wrong to admit you are lonely, so you stay quiet. The Bible shows us that loneliness is not always about isolation. Some of the deepest loneliness in Scripture happens in the middle of people. David was a king admired and followed, yet he cried out that his soul was downcast within him. Elijah stood before crowds and performed miracles, yet later sat alone under a tree asking God to take his life. Even Jesus was followed by multitudes, but there were moments when no one truly understood what he carried. The presence of people does not guarantee the presence of connection. What makes this kind of loneliness so heavy is that it's invisible. When you're alone, people understand your pain. But when you're surrounded, your ache has no obvious explanation. Others assume the noise is enough to fill the emptiness. They assume companionship replaces understanding. But the heart does not need more faces. It needs to be known. And when that doesn't happen, loneliness grows quietly. God understands this. He knows the difference between being around people and being seen by them. That is why Scripture never minimizes inner loneliness just because outer life looks full. God does not say, "You shouldn't feel this way." He listens, He draws near, He meets people not just in empty rooms, but in crowded spaces where their hearts feel unseen. If you feel this way, you are not weak, you are not ungrateful, you are human. And God is close enough to meet you right in the middle of the crowd, where your heart feels untouched. Number 2, the loneliness no one asks about. Some loneliness doesn't come from abandonment, but from silence. Not the silence of an empty house, but the silence of unasked questions. No one asks how you really are, because you seem strong. No one asks what you're carrying, because you've always carried it well. Over time, you learn to answer "I'm fine" before anyone even finishes the question. This is the loneliness that settles into your daily life. You go through routines. You show up. You may notice to others' problems. You pray for people who are hurting. Yet no one pauses long enough to notice the tiredness in your spirit. And after a while, you stop expecting them to. You tell yourself it's easier this way. But deep down, your heart longs to be seen without having to explain itself. The Bible speaks directly to this kind of hidden pain. God consistently shows concern for what remains unspoken. Scripture reminds us that even before a word is on our tongue, God knows it completely. He understands prayers that never make it out of the heart. He sees tears that fall in private. He counts sighs, not just sentences. This is where God is radically different from people. People ask what they can handle hearing. God listens to everything. People often notice results. God notices process. People ask about what's visible. God looks at what's buried. When no one asks how you are, because you seem okay, God asks because He knows you are not. You don't need the right words for Him. You don't need permission to be honest. God is already aware of the loneliness you've learned to hide. And the fact that He sees it does not push Him away. It draws Him closer. Number 3, God sees you in the middle of the noise. The world is loud. Everyone is trying to be noticed, trying to be heard, trying to matter. In that noise, it's easy to feel like you disappear. Not because you aren't present, but because you aren't competing. You may not be the loudest voice, the strongest personality, or the most impressive story in the room, and slowly, without anyone meaning to, you fade into the background. But God is not distracted by noise. Crowds have never confused His vision. In Scripture, God consistently fixes His attention on individuals even when thousands are present. While others look toward power, confidence, and performance, God looks toward the heart. He notices the person who is standing quietly at the edge, the one whose faith feels small but sincere, the one whose strength is running out. When life feels overwhelming, it's natural to think God only responds to the loud prayers, the bold faith, the visible obedience. But the Bible reveals a God who hears whispers, a God who sees the quiet endurance that never makes headlines. While people are impressed by what shines, God is moved by what is faithful. You may feel like you are lost in the noise of responsibilities, expectations, and constant activity. You keep moving because stopping feels dangerous. But God sees you even when you feel drowned out. He sees you not as a task, a role, or a function, but as a person. His attention is not divided. His awareness of you is not partial. Being unseen by people does not lessen your significance. In many cases, Scripture shows that God often works most meaningfully where the world is least attentive, right where you feel overlooked. God's eyes are already resting on you. Number 4, seen by God when you feel forgotten. There is a particular ache that comes with feeling forgotten. Not rejected, not attacked, just unnoticed. Life moves forward, plans continue, conversations happen, and you feel like you're no longer on anyone's radar. You wonder if your presence would even be missed. That quiet question hurts more than most people realize. The Bible is filled with stories of people who felt forgotten, individuals passed over, delayed, overlooked, or left waiting, while others moved ahead. And yet, time and again, God steps into those moments with intentional care. He does not rush past forgotten people. He remembers them by name. Feeling forgotten can make you question your value. It can slowly convince you that if no one is checking on you, then maybe you don't matter as much as you once thought. But Scripture pushes back against that lie with force and tenderness. God's remembrance is not dependent on attention cycles, seasons, or human timing. When God remembers, He acts. Even when people forget your effort, your faithfulness, your pain, God does not. He sees the days that blur together. He sees the prayers that feel unanswered. He sees the obedience that seems unnoticed, and He assures us that nothing offered to Him is ever wasted or ignored. You may feel invisible in this season, but you are not absent from God's heart. His memory of you is active, not sentimental. He sees you now, not as an afterthought, but as someone deeply known and intentionally held. Number 5. When loneliness makes you question your worth. Loneliness has a quiet way of rewriting the story you tell yourself. It doesn't shout lies, it whispers them slowly, patiently, until they start to sound like truth. And days pass and no one notices your struggle. When your presence seems optional rather than essential, it's easy to assume the problem must be you. Your worth begins to feel conditional, measured by how often you are invited, remembered, or needed. The Bible confronts this lie directly. God never ties value to visibility. From the beginning, worth is established by creation, not confirmation. You matter because God made you, not because people affirm you. Yet loneliness can blur that truth, making you feel replaceable, forgettable, or insignificant. And once that belief settles in, it affects how you pray, how you serve, and how you see yourself. Scripture reminds us that God's attention is not based on usefulness or performance. He does not love you more when you are noticed, and He does not love you less when you are ignored. His love is steady, not reactive. When loneliness tells you that being unseen means being unimportant, God counters that lie with His constant presence. You may feel like your life is passing quietly, without recognition, but God sees value where others see absence. He sees faith where others see weakness. He sees perseverance where others see silence. Your worth has never been diminished by loneliness. If anything, it has been safeguarded by a God who defines you, not the crowd. Number 6. God draws near to the lonely heart. Loneliness often creates the fear that God is distant. When people pull away, it's easy to assume God has done the same. But Scripture reveals a God who does the opposite. He moves closer, not after loneliness ends, not when life feels full again, but right in the middle of the emptiness. God's nearness is not loud or forceful. He does not overwhelm the lonely heart with noise or demands. He draws near gently, patiently, meeting people in their weakness rather than waiting for their strength. The Bible describes Him as close to the brokenhearted, attentive to those whose spirits feel crushed. That closeness is not poetic, it is personal. When you feel alone, God does not rush you to fix the feeling. He sits with you in it. He listens without correction. He comforts without minimizing your pain. And in that quiet presence, something begins to shift. Not because circumstances change immediately, but because you are no longer alone in your loneliness. You may not always feel God's nearness emotionally. Faith does not always come with warmth. But Scripture assures us that God's presence is not dependent on feeling. He is with you in the long nights, in the unanswered prayers, in the moments when hope feels thin. The lonely heart is not overlooked by God. It is where he often chooses to stay the longest. Number 7. From invisible to held. Learning to rest in God's gaze. There comes a moment when loneliness begins to change. Not because people suddenly understand you, but because you start to see yourself differently. You realize that being unseen by others does not mean you are unheld. God's gaze has been on you long before you ever noticed it, and that gaze is not critical or distant. It is steady, attentive, and full of care. Resting in God's gaze means releasing the constant need to be validated by people who may never fully understand you. It means learning to live from God's awareness instead of the world's approval. This kind of rest does not arrive all at once. It grows slowly through quiet trust, through honest prayer, through choosing to believe what it can feel as though God is speaking through about you even when loneliness speaks louder. The Bible invites us to live from the inside out, to anchor our identity in what is eternal, rather than what is visible. When you begin to trust that God truly sees you, something softens. You stop striving to prove your worth. You stop chasing recognition as evidence of value. You begin to find peace, not in being noticed, but in being known. This does not mean loneliness disappears instantly, but it no longer defines you. Instead of feeling invisible, you begin to feel held, carried by a God who understands every layer of your heart. In His presence, your loneliness becomes a place of encounter rather than abandonment. Conclusion: if you are surrounded by people and still feel alone, this message is for you. Your pain is not enemy, and your silence has not gone unnoticed by God. You are not forgotten, overlooked, or fading from significance. Even now, as you may notice, God sees you fully, without confusion, without distance, without condition. The world may miss your quiet faith, your unseen endurance, your hidden tears, but God does not. He knows your name. He knows your story. He knows the weight you carry when no one else asks. And He is closer than you think. You do not need to become louder to matter. You do not need to be more visible to be valued. You are already seen by the One who created you, walks with you, and holds you through every season. And in that truth, even loneliness begins to lose its power. Consumer Christian Choksan la YouTube boo. Ten nakinese. Richard Dwaypan Hook. Da video. Fishgur Tang. Kialu. Shichen Kanzezare Cheer. Ribingang Tingan Mi. If this message spoke to you, don't rush away just yet. Let it settle. Let God finish what He started in your heart today. If you're walking through a season where you feel unseen, I want you to know you're not alone here. This channel is a place for quiet faith, honest struggles, and reminders that God is still near, even when life feels empty. Consider subscribing if you want more messages like this, messages that don't rush your healing but walk with you through it. And if you feel comfortable, leave a comment. You don't have to explain everything. Even a simple "I'm here" is enough. God sees you, and you're always welcome back here.